Good morning, everybody. I'd like to start now with my class. And today, our lecture is International Business Etiquette. This lecture will be divided into 7 or 10 lectures. And today is our introduction. When we talk about international etiquette, especially business etiquette, lots of people would ask, what is it all about? Why do we talk about international business etiquette? As we know that China is now stepping on the international stage, and we are dealing with people all the time. And international business etiquette is really about your public relations. Whether you are a people person, how much you are good at manipulating relations with other people, and also how good you are at public speaking. So on the international stage, you are really behaving like an actor, and you are having different relations with various people. And when we talk about business etiquette, some people think business etiquette is about how to handle a fork or knife on the table. Actually, it's much more than that. When you are having a contact or relations with other people, you will see that the details will determine whether you can be a success. So in other words, your success will be determined by the details. Some people feel that they cannot be trusted in social situations or in business. This is because you are not confident enough. You do not have confidence. You do not have self-control that's necessary to do all the things there. So if you say what the international business all about, the etiquette all about, is it is presenting yourself the best image in front of other people. The kind of polish you have, how well you stand before others, how much that you can perform yourself in front of other people. So you are doing a show, actually, and your show should be taken seriously when you are in front of the public. And etiquette is also about making other people around you feel comfortable, and they want to have good relations with you. So we say in this area, in the etiquette area, people are the key factors. So when you talk about business etiquette, people, remember this word, people are the key factors in your own success, in the success of your business. Actually, many people, sometimes they perform a profitable alliance that is having good relations with other people. Actually, if you do not perform well, your worthwhile potentials will be lost. This is because you are not paying enough attention to what you're doing. We may also use another word. We say, your mistake probably is unintentional. You did not do on purpose. Yet, you have made that mistake. This is because you're not paying enough attention to your behavior, to your manners. In one of the training programs, well known, the person is called Dan McLeod. He is the president of a Positive Management Leadership Program. And in one of the training classes, this is what he said. He said, show me a boss who treats his or her employees abrasively, and I'll show you an environment ripe for labor problems and obviously poor customers' relations. To interpret what he said, it is like this, that if you do not treat your employees well, you will definitely have problems. When he used the term labor problems, it means that you will have conflicts between management and your people working in the factory or working in an office. So if you do not have any behavior and that is you pay attention to, usually these behaviors are perceived as disrespectful. In other words, you're not respecting other people, or discourteous, not polite enough to other people. Yet, you can term all these behavior as unintentional. Quote, unintentional, not deliberately. All these unintentional behavior actually could have been avoided by practicing good manners, by practicing good etiquettes during your daily activities or associations with other people. We have found that most negative experiences with someone were unintentional, and these unintentional manners or behaviors could be easily repaired. You can repair all these unintentional behavior or manners by keeping an open mind, always ready to accept suggestions by others, or by maintaining an open and honest communication. Communicate with people in time and communicate with the people with an open heart to understand each other. So we said that basic advancement of practice in etiquette is the valuable knowledge you have. And this is also what the course is all about, to get the knowledge, to learn the things we probably do not pay attention to every day. We are in different situations every day, for example, lots of different situations. Yet, a second chance very often is impossible. A second chance very often is impractical. That is to say, you realize your mistake, you realize your improper behavior, you say, oh, could I have a second chance? No. And your chance is over, and your chance is lost, especially when you are dealing with a large business and you may lose millions of dollars because of your unintentional behavior. In the business etiquette, in the relationship with people, actually there are many written and unwritten rules or laws in dealing with people. And these unwritten or written guidelines for etiquette, and it is certainly appropriate for a business person to learn as much as possible. When you enter a business, for example, and if you are equipped with the knowledge of people relationship, then you can do much better. So we said it's appropriate for all of us, before entering a business, to learn all the rules, written or unwritten, the rules and the guidelines. So usually we give people a warning. We say the warning is that there is no possible way to know all of them, but we can do our best to acquire as much knowledge as we can in this area. We know that some of the guidelines are very difficult to remember. As a matter of fact, remembering these things probably will not help you much. If you need more help, the best thing probably is to practice. And you do it in your everyday work, in your everyday relationship with other people. You put it into practice. In some companies, these guidelines are very complicated and very difficult to follow. It really depends on the different company that you are working in, and also depends on the local culture. For example, when you are in an international business, very often you would travel to different places, to different countries. And one day you may travel to the Arabic countries, and one day you may travel to the African continent, or the next day you may travel to Latin America. And when you are in a different place, you would be faced with the local cultures. So again, it depends on the local cultures you are dealing with, and also the requirements of the situation. No matter how much you practice and no matter how much you learn, there's always a possibility that you may commit a small mistake. You may commit a little error. It is impossible for everybody to avoid all errors. We are all prone to different errors and mistakes. Maybe you haven't made a mistake yet so far, but sooner or later you will, because that's the human nature. We all do this. Therefore, we need to acquire the knowledge. We need to learn as much as possible about the etiquette and also pay attention to your everyday behavior. Though we cannot avoid making an error, we can minimize, we can reduce the chances to make as fewer mistakes or errors as possible. And when we make a mistake like that, we should be able to recover quickly from that mistake to avoid a bad impression created by the mistakes that we've made. How do we avoid this? One way to avoid this is by generally be considerate, be attentive to the people around you, especially to those who are concerned about you, and also by adhering to the basic rules or etiquette. It is impossible to avoid mistakes, but we can reduce. And we can reduce the chances of making a mistake by remembering, by learning as much of the rules and etiquette as we can. So we say that the most important thing probably in the business etiquette class is to remember to be courteous, to be polite, and to be thoughtful to all the people around you, regardless of the situations. It doesn't matter where you are, at what situations you are. If you remain thoughtful, if you remain courteous, even if you make a little error, other people probably will forgive you or will understand why you have made that little error. So consider other people's feelings. Okay, before you do something, you try to consider how other people would feel if I do this, and if I say this, how they would feel. Okay, so try to stick to the conventions as diplomatically as you can. Try to deal with the situation with the diplomatic manner. And also, we sometimes come to conflicts. People may have conflicts between each other, and address the conflict as situation-related. It's okay to have conflicts between people, but try to deal with the problem as a situation-related. In other words, not person-related. Do not damage the relationship between people. You may talk about this matter itself. So situation-related, not person-related when you are dealing with a situation like that. Well, what if you have made a little error and people realize that it's an error you've made? What should you do? Well, don't worry. The best thing, actually, or the first thing also, is to apologize. Just to apologize to the people around you if you made a little error. For example, you stepped on somebody's toes, and you just simply say sorry, right? If you say sorry, they will understand you, they will forgive you. It's just as simple as that. Actually, this is a rule all of us probably learned in kindergarten, right? Your parents educated you when you were a small girl, small boy, that if you did something wrong, say sorry immediately to the person, right? Although we are entering the business world, but the rules we learned in kindergarten are very similar, more or less the same, really. Well, does this sound simplistic? In a way, yes, it does sound simplistic. We know that the qualities we admire most when we see them in people, especially in the leadership situations. And those are the very traits, actually, we work so hard to engender in our children. And the same thing is happening now to us, right? We should follow the same rules. Of course, the best thing to do is not to apologize, but try to avoid mistakes before we make the little error. There are many things we should avoid in the business situation. I don't know whether you can think of anything, but let me give you an example. Some people, in a crowded place, for example, some people, when he wants to make his voice heard, for example, he would raise his voice, right? Or he would shout. And most people don't realize, actually, by raising your voice, you are losing sometimes your temper and you will be misunderstood. On the contrary, the raising of the voice will not catch more attention from the people. It is probably more effective in a crowded place when you lower your voice. It's more effective. People will catch what you are saying in order to have the attention. As teachers, we have discovered, for example, when you are facing a large crowd of students and when they are talking to each other, and you try to raise your voice and silence the whole class, actually they don't hear you. And when you stop talking, when you remain silent for 1 or 2 seconds, the entire class gets quiet. So this is just one example. So we say when you are raising your voice, you have to be very careful. Another thing to avoid is to not to use harsh language when you talk to people. Harsh language or a derogatory language toward anybody is usually very bad. Whether the person is present or whether the person is absent, do not use any derogatory language or bad language toward that person. Thirdly, do not interrupt other people, or try to avoid interruption as much as possible when you see other people busy with things there. I know that in a meeting, in a discussion, or in a meeting, in a discussion panel, some people like to talk, more active than others, and they want to get as much so-called airtime as possible. Airtime means get your voice heard by other people. Okay? And you want to be #1 speaker. You want to speak first. You want to be heard first. Actually, whether or not being the first speaker is not the most important. And the first speaker may not be the most effective either. But if you keep confidence, if you get the attention of other people, it doesn't matter whether you're first or second, and it is not what your number is. Actually, it's what you say. What you say is more important because what you say carries the credibility and carries the respectability. If people think that you need to be respected, they actually would hear more of what you say rather than shouting and they don't hear anything. These are the general rules. And I also have some basic guidelines for you to follow in coming situations, or tips that you should follow also. These guidelines and tips are found helpful by most people in general, especially in work environments, for example, and also in different social situations. For example, when we talk about international business etiquette, remember I stressed one word, people, right? People is the key factor. When you are entering the international business situation, you are not dealing with things, you're not dealing with objects, but we are dealing with people. So, remember, people are the key factors there. And when we talk about people, remember this: talk and visit with people. What does that mean? It means establish people relations, right? Between individuals, between different offices maybe. And when you are dealing with the people, not just visit, not just talk, but also pay attention to this. What is it? Do not differentiate by position or standing. In other words, do not show any prejudice toward people. Do not make differences between people who are higher in position or who are lower in position. No. And that's called prejudice. So do not differentiate by positions or standings within a company or within an office. They're all, treat them as equals. We know that some people feel that leaders, people in the management, are much more important, and people who work in the corridor, for example, a person who keeps the corridors clean, and these people are usually referred to as janitors. The janitors are important too to the company. Secretaries, they may be lower on the ladder, in a social position. Secretaries may be lower, but they are also very important. So both secretaries and janitors are important people in the company. And sometimes, you may not realize, sometimes they have very, very big power. They may have tremendous power over some of the things. For example, they may give you help at certain places or time. And if you're not good to them, they may hinder your career. They may, create obstacles or even make troubles without your knowledge. So what I'm saying is, try to be good to all people. Treat them equally. Whether they are people in the management, whether they are janitors, whether they are secretaries, they're all the same. Treat them equally. For example, in a large company, very often you would do a presentation. You would give a presentation whether to people in your office or maybe across offices. You may want to express your ideas, and you get a group of people and have a presentation by doing a PPT. And when you prepare a document, when you prepare the projectors like this, you realize your equipment may run into trouble, like we have today. Our projector is not working, right? We need technical people, right? The technicians to come to help. A secretary or a janitor may perform the same function. They may give you the necessary help at different times. So at these situations, you realize that everybody in the company is important. You should not differentiate people by their positions or by their standings. The second thing to remember when you are dealing with the people is to make it a point to arrive 10 or 15 minutes early when you are prepared to do a presentation. Arrive in the hall or in the conference room 10 or 15 minutes early so that you will have some time to visit with people who work near you, who are giving you all the necessary help, who are there to set up the facilities, the screens, the cameras, the projectors, the tables and desks, whatever. So you have some time to visit the people, to talk to them, or even to thank them for the necessary help you need. When you are visiting any site, whether you are visiting another office or whether you are visiting a workshop, try to linger a little longer than necessary. For example, linger over a cup of coffee. You don't leave immediately. You sit and talk and have a cup of coffee or tea with them so that you could communicate. Try to establish a closer relations. And sometimes you may not know each other. A cup of coffee or a cup of tea may give you a chance to introduce yourself, right? Talk about yourself and give them some information about who you are. For example, when you are attending a meeting and if you arrive a little early, you can introduce yourself to other participants. Remember, when you have a large conference, very often people don't know each other very well. And if you arrive a little early, you could introduce yourself. So get to know the people around you. At social situations, use the circumstances or events itself as an icebreaker. You know the word icebreaker. When you don't know each other, you don't speak to anybody, right? And because you don't know them. So the relationship between people is like an ice, very cold, right? But if you use the circumstances, if you use the events as an icebreaker, because that's the chance, you are all coming to the same conference, you at least have the same goal or research area. So try to come early and talk to the people around you and know each other better. When you are introducing yourself, you can ask probably how they know the host. For example, in a conference, if you are the participant, you are all invited to the conference. Who invited you? That's one person, the host. The host invited you to the conference. So we have one common person, right? We all know that person because we are all individually invited here. So we would like to know, oh, how did you know the host? How did you know the host? Okay. So that's one way probably to start a conversation. And after that, you may introduce yourself and say a little more about yourself. For example, tell them about your hobbies. What hobbies do you have? Or do you have any kids? Do you keep any pets? Do you keep a dog or a cat or whatever? That's another way to break the ice. Whatever you say, do not relate things too personal. Do not relate to things too personal, okay? Talk about your hobbies, talk about the pets you keep, talk about the children you have, but do not, first of all, ask other people what hobbies they have, what children they have. You can start by yourself. And then if they feel you are getting very warm and close, they will introduce what they want to say. They want to introduce their children to you. They want to introduce their hobbies to you. That's one way. So if you tell them the hobbies you have, that would be enough to get people to open up their minds, to open up their hearts, and to know each other as a person. And once you talk to people, try to keep notes on people. What does that mean? If you meet 20 people in the morning, 20 more people in the afternoon, how could you remember them? It is almost impossible to remember so many people, so many names, so many faces, right? It would be difficult. So keep a note on people. That's what I mean. Try to remember. How? How can we keep notes on people? Well, I'm sure that most of you probably have already found ways to do that. For example, with your cell phones today. All the phones are, not all, maybe most of the phones are smartphones, right? And you can use your smartphones as a notebook, right? Keeping their names, keeping their telephone numbers, keep their positions, keeping their working companies. All necessary information can be entered into your smartphone. Or if you feel that you are very close, you can even probably remember their children's names. Remember their birthdays, for example, to send them gifts or flowers when their birthdays arrive if you want. Why do we do this? This is one way to keep contact, right? Of course, if you are not carrying your smartphone, you probably carry a pad or similar equipment. Today, we can say that we have dozens of software applications like the iPad or iPhones or whatever smartphones you have. And these little gadgets, these little machines can give us great help. We can store a lot of information in that little gadget, in the phone, in the smartphone. So that's a good way to keep notes on people, to remember the whatever information you like to remember. And when you have all these things entered into your phone, and very soon you may discover you have a database. And this database is not other database, but it's a people database. And if you switch your smartphones, you discover probably you have already listed 200 or 300 names there, right? And that's a people database. And that's a resource that you can use in the future with the names, with their addresses, with the phone numbers, even the birthdays, or even their children's names. So whatever depth of information is appropriate for your situation, right? Of course, if you don't feel that close, you may not remember their birth dates. But if you do feel very close, you may even enter the birth dates into your database so you can remember that. So that's about remembering the people, and people is the key factor. If we move on to the next step I wanted to talk about is the peers and subordinates. What does peers mean? Peers means people of the same rank, people of the same standing, or people near the same age group. Or you're all in the 20s or 30s or whatever, 30s or 40s. And subordinates means people who work under your leadership. They are the lower in position. They are the people lower in position, and they are your subordinates. Why do we talk about that? In contrast, we have usually 3 layers of people we face with. On top, the management people, or your boss, right? And then on the same level as you, they are your peers. And the people who are lower than you, they are your subordinates. So we are faced with 3 layers of people almost every day. And we know that most people would have the impression that your boss is the most important, right? People in the management are the most important. So you are making the people above you happy all the time. You give good impressions to the people above you. Is it a good thing? Yes, it is a good thing to keep your boss happy. But to impress your boss only is not enough. It's not enough because your comments probably will also come from your peers, will also come from your subordinates. And their comments sometimes are vital, whether you can stay on your position or not. Not just your boss, right? So we say impressing your boss isn't enough. Why do we say this? Well, a few years ago, there was a study made by Manchester Partners International. This is an organization called Manchester Partners International. And that study says that even in this tight job market, 40% of the new management hires fail in the first job. In other words, it's very natural for people to fail when you are faced with an interview looking for a job. The interview, in the first interview, you would be flunked. You would lose the opportunity. Up to 40%. You see, it's very high. This is because they are paying too much attention to the boss only, not peers, not the subordinates. So we say the key reason for their failure is their inability, remember that, inability, unable to build good relationships with peers and subordinates. Yes, they may have good relations with the higher up, with the management people, with the boss. They fail because they did not establish a good relationship with people on the same level and people who are lower than you are. So you can see the relationship between peers and subordinates, they are very, very important. And social rank or class is really a cornerstone. What's a cornerstone? It's the key there to make the structure solid, right? So in a social interaction, in many cultures, we say the social rank and class is the cornerstone. In every corporation, we say there's a climate. We may term this as corporate climate. Or sometimes it's called a corporate culture. That's something similar. Okay? The corporate climate in China is no exception when we talk about social rank and class. Social rank and class in China works always, sometimes as an undercurrent, probably. So it's very, very similar with the international corporate climate. And people they tend to feel uneasy until they have seen the organizational chart. They look at the chart, say, oh, here is the boss, he's the second boss, he's the third boss. So when they see the chart, they would feel at ease, so they can deal with people at various levels. This is natural because they have to find out to whom they should report their work, right? You know, in the organization, you always report to people in the higher position. And people in the higher position report to those above them, right? That's the layers of management. You do that. So until you know who you report to, you don't feel easy. So this is very, very natural in a corporation. They feel that it is very important that they show respect to the people directly above them. That is, who is his or her leader. And who are their superiors? And who are their peers? Who are their subordinates? You see? When you enter a company, when you enter a corporation, probably you will discover you will consciously or unconsciously do the same. You're trying to find out who's my leader, where is my leader there, right? Try to keep watch, and so you can report and you can make them happy because they are your superiors. This is very, very natural. But also remember, today we are living in an era of very fast change, especially technologically, right? With the development of technology, the progress in this area is very, very fast. So we see the advancement in this area all the time. And this makes our situation almost impossible to keep up with the change. And also to keep the close relationship with a client. When you are in a corporation, you talk about clients, right? That's how you do business as a salesman, and you have your clients. You should treat everybody equally, no matter who they are, because one day, you don't know, somebody who used to be your peers may rise up to a higher position. He was your peers yesterday, but today he is your superior. He's above you. You see? So that's another reason that we should keep good relations with all people, the peers and subordinates. And even your subordinates may one day rise up on the same level as you. Right? So this is why I talked about the advancement in technology. Because of the advancement, because of the fast development, anything can happen. So we said mergers and acquisitions add to this class mixing. When you are working in the corporation, one word that comes out often is merging. What does merging mean? Merging means two or more companies or corporations become one. That's two companies merged into one. So, people relationship is important in that respect. Somebody working in a different company yesterday, but today he is your leader. He is your superior because of the merging of the company. So, we use the term class mixing. Comes up and goes down. That company may be your competitor. There were two auto companies one day, but a few days later they become one, they merged. He used to be your competitor a few days ago, and today he becomes your co-worker. You work in the same workshop. You work in the same company. You work in the same office. You see? So anything can happen with the fast development of today's world.